1 minute passes. Good evening and welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Township of North Country's public planning meeting for September 27th. We have 3 public planning meetings applications scheduled for this evening's meeting. Members of the public are able to attend the township office in person to speak to any application or register with the clerk's division to attend electronically. Members of the public who have registered to attend electronically have been provided with the Zoom link to join the meeting this evening and have indicated to staff which application they would like to participate in. Staff will move those individuals who have registered into the meeting to speak in the order of the application being heard, and those who are present in person will be able to speak to the application when it is reached on the agenda and will be asked to approach the podium to speak. Please note that all speakers are provided with no more than 5 minutes to address the application. The clerk will time each speaker and advise the chair when the 5-minute time limit is up. I'd now like to call the meeting to order and have approval of the agenda, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Rowland, that council adopt the September 27th, 2022 public meeting agenda as presented with the following addendum. One, add correspondence received for item 8.2, report number PD 37-2022, proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 3081 Old Beverly Road, file number ZC06-22.
Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. I would now like to read Indigenous Territory Acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe and the neutral people. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements and their contribution to our community. We offer this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation between the Indigenous and non-Indigenous people of Canada. And now we will pause to reflect on what has happened in the past, reflect on how we're moving forward together, and reflect on our hopes for a stronger and better future. Thank you. Councilors, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in general nature thereof? Seeing none. Adoption of the minutes, please.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Rowland, the council approved the public planning meeting minutes dated June the 28th, 2022.
All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. There is no committee of adjustment tonight for public meetings. 8.1, report number PD 36-2022. Proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 552 Piper Street, file number ZC-05/22. Notice was given to those in accordance with the Planning Act. The clerk will record everyone who has commented on this application, attended, and or have registered with the clerk's division to attend the meeting this evening. Those individuals will be notified of the decision or the convening for future meetings. There is a sign-in sheet, I believe, so there's a sign-in sheet. So if you are here for any of the applications, please sign in so the clerk knows how to get a hold of you to advise you of future meetings. I'd now like to introduce CAO Andrew McNeil, Chief Administrative Officer, who will be presenting this application. Andrew, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. I have a brief presentation providing an overview of wrong file.
He's in training. Should he ever use his present job?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have a short presentation which provides a summary overview of a zoning bylaw amendment application Z0522 related to 552 Piper Street. The purpose of tonight's public meeting is to provide an overview of the development proposal, solicit comments from interested members of the public, government agencies, and other stakeholders that could be reflected in a future report to Township Council on the merits of the planning application, and to identify issues the staff will be preparing as part of the future consideration of the follow-up report. The purpose of the application, it is a zoning bylaw amendment application, and it's being done to facilitate the construction of a warehouse building addition, as well as a new wash facility within the lands identified as Part 2 within site-specific exemption 20.1.8 as set out in the general zoning bylaw. There was an earlier special permissions applied to this property, which were extremely prescriptive, and to make any adjustments, regardless of how minor in nature, triggers the amendment process to update the bylaw to reflect the intended future use. The proponent, in support of the zoning amendment, has prepared a concept plan, stationary noise study, a stormwater management brief. Because of the adjacency of the Nith River, the Natural Heritage System assessment, building plans and elevations, and a salt management plan. Each of these reports are available on the township's website, in the planning division portion of the website, and those reports can be downloaded and or viewed online. Each of these reports is being reviewed internally by township staff and where applicable by the appropriate external government agency. This next slide shows notionally the location of the subject lands. This property actually fronts onto 3 public roads. To the north is Gladstone Road between Trussler through Piper. We have the Piper Road frontage adjacent to the Nith River. And then we have Trussler Road along the east boundary. The area that we're actually focusing on tonight, this is a relatively large property, almost 50 acres in size, as outlined in red. But we're actually focusing on this center portion outlined in yellow, and you can see expansive tarmac area associated with the existing transportation terminal. This yellow area is approximately 6.6 acres in area, and it is the current location of DNR Hall Transportation Inc. Within this yellow area, the 6.6 acre area is the existing transportation terminal, which is comprised of an operation yard, distribution center with an associated office, storage, cross-dock facility, wash bay, repair shop, and of course, surrounding the building is the parking for both fleet and for staff. The property itself is currently zoned agriculture and specific to the area known as Part 2. So largely that yellow area that we had on the prior slide, extending through the access driveway to Trussler Road, because all trucks enter and exit via the Trussler Road entrance. There is a classification 20.1.8 Part 2, And within this area, being the 6.6 acre area, the transportation terminal is identified as a permitted use. This plan identifies generally what we're speaking to in terms of the proposed amendment and why it's being triggered. The owner is seeking to accommodate an expansion to the rear of the existing warehouse building, approximately 7,200 square feet in size, and a freestanding wash building, because the existing wash building located here is being decommissioned and turned into part of that warehouse to facilitate extra storage across dock-type facilities. And such new wash station enclosed building is being proposed at this location, which would be approximately 4,995 square feet. The amendment is required because under the current provisions of exemption 20.1.8, it states that no additions, extensions, enlargements, or new buildings shall be permitted. So to accommodate the warehouse expansion and the new wash facility requires that permission to be amended. In addition, the overall maximum area of all buildings on the property has to be adjusted accordingly to accommodate the additional buildings square footage. This drawing identifies, the proposed elevations, which are not relevant necessarily to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, but would be captured in a future site plan control agreement as an amendment to account for the development of the site if the zoning permissions are approved. As you can see, we're looking at a typical warehouse type facility with access doors that are oversized to accommodate highway tractor trailer type units, consistent with what we would expect at a transportation terminal. This is just some photos of the property, identifying spatially where the additions would be. And as you can see, and more clearly on this lower left-hand corner, this is the existing rear elevation of the existing warehouse building. And generally speaking, this is where we're looking at the building addition on the north elevation and extending into today what is a hard surface area. And generally speaking, it would occupy where this cluster of trucks are currently parked. Context in terms of provincial planning policies and associated regulations, referencing specifically the provincial policy statement. Basically, we are directed and encouraged to promote a diversification of the economic base and employment opportunities under places to grow for the greater Golden Horseshoe. Typically, development is not allowed outside the settlement areas. However, expansions to existing building structures and accessory uses are permitted. So there's a long-standing presence of this operation at this address, and we're facilitating an expansion consistent with section 4231E of the Greater Golden Horseshoe Plan. Looking at the township and the regional official plan, property in both documents is designated prime agricultural. There is a small portion of the township lands, the township official plan that is captured as hazard lands, and that's associated with the edge of the Nith River system along the Piper Street frontage. However, it is not within the development parcel that's before council tonight. With respect to correspondence that's been received as of tonight's public meeting, there has been correspondence received. It's included in your agenda package. A resident on Welsh Drive. Specifically, they had no issues with the proposed use and or expansion as proposed through the zoning amendment. However, there was concerns about floodlights on the property that exist. and the glare or the bright light associated with that, with those luminaires. And so we had previously spoken with the owner about this, and there are shields being ordered to curb the effects of those luminaires. With respect to emergency correspondence that's been received leading into tonight's public meeting, the Grand River Conservation Authority, internally our own engineering, public works, building department had no issues, Enbridge Gas, the school board, County of Oxford, because Trussler Road is a boundary road. In this area of Trussler, Oxford is the dominant road authority, and they have no issues because there's no change to the existing access drive onto Trussler Road. And then, of course, finally, Grand Bridge Energy. With respect to the region of Waterloo, they have raised two issues. One, they are going to require the completion of a stage 1 archaeological assessment report conducted by a licensed archaeologist within the disturbed area of the existing property. So the staging area for the trucks and the like. The region is basically asking for a qualified individual to indicate that because of the historic disturbance, there will not be any findings through a normal stage 2 assessment. And the region wishes an update to the noise impact study to account for the background traffic noise emanating from the Trussler Road corridor. They will not support the amendment until these 2 updated documents are provided. So, staff, obviously coming out of tonight's meeting, any comments or correspondence that's been received in the consultation process will be reviewed and assessed. We're obviously going to look on the effect of the proposed development in the context of matters of provincial interest. And obviously we're looking at efficient use of land, promoting the safe and healthy communities and the appropriate location of growth and development. This will be done through the lens of both the township's official plan and the intent of the general zoning bylaw. We'll be looking at the proposal itself. Obviously, the nature of the zoning application encourages more development at this location to support the transportation terminal. And while some of these potential impacts would be addressed through future site plan, it's important that we consider them initially as part of the zoning permissions. We'll obviously be looking at density, scale, the massing of the building and its location within the context of the property, and obviously looking at landscaping. We already mentioned the lighting, which would capture under the site plan process, which would follow if this amendment is approved. And then we'll be looking at traffic circulation, parking patterns, and positioning of the buildings. Once again, generally speaking to the site plan and possibility of specific standards being tailored into the bylaw to inform the next step in the site plan. It is the recommendation of staff to Township Council that any comments or correspondence that have been received from the public or government agencies through the consultation process be returned back to staff, and that a future report to council disposition of staff be prepared. Madam Mayor, that's the overview of this zone application.
Thank you, CEO McNeely. The applicant, I believe, does not wish to speak, is not present today. Oh, you're going to speak. Would you like to speak?
I can, but I think Andrew I'm here for any questions that we have.
Thank you. There is Brenda and Don Gaylord. Would you like to speak? I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. It happens every time.
I glanced too quickly. Would you like to speak?
No, I think we're gonna wait and see.
This will lighting thing get some word on. And there's been a lot of improvements in lighting so that things will end down instead of infiltrating further out.
Exactly.
Any member of council have any questions? Council Roman.
Madam Mayor, I was just curious about this exemption 20.1.8. It just seems to me that we're shoehorning these buildings onto this exempted area on page 3 of the report. Is there enough room for Junior Hall? Do they need additional space for parking? Because it seems if you look at page 5 and 6 of the report, the two areas that they're talking about are actually being used for parking right now. So when they build these new buildings, parking will be displaced. Is there a way for them to increase the area, yellow area indicated on page 3 of the report, or do we have to do a whole separate process to enlarge that area for them?
So Madam Mayor, through to Councillor Rowland, we're satisfied based on the scale of the expansion proposed for the present period, that there is sufficient land within that 6.6 acre site. Both in terms of the intensity of the use, but also I'm going to call it traffic function and form through the site. Longer term, if there's future expansions, perhaps new business entities that may be affiliated with a transportation terminal, those would have to be reviewed in that lens. We did have a discussion with Mr. Sheedle and Mr. Hall a couple of months ago, and started having them think a little bit more about long-term in their business plan. Because at some point, we probably want to separate the business from the broader 49 acre parcel. And so to do that, you'd want to look at your future business plan and what would be required, and then look at it in a comprehensive manner. So that lens has been touched upon. Based on the nature of the proposal we're talking about today, we're satisfied that there's sufficient land area, and that's certainly the priority of the landowner because they need this additional space to accommodate the business at the present term.
Any other questions, councillors? Seeing none. CEO McNeely, would it be appropriate for me to speak to regional council in regards to, especially the noise one? I'll tell you why it bothers me. We had a committee meeting a little while ago in regards to the noise of major roads created by the region that impact on the residences. And it was determined at that time that that noise was the responsibility of the region, and therefore they would be putting sound walls up on a lot of major roads. Is this not the situation, and why is it being put onto the individual?
Staff has raised this issue with the region. It actually came through as a revised letter, if you notice the correspondence that was included in your package. It caught us a little bit off guard because it has nothing to do with the expansion or the intensity of use, which is actually before council tonight. J&R Hall cannot control what happens along the Trussell Road corridor. So yes, if you could assist us with your colleagues at the region. Mr. Sheedle and I are continuing to have those discussions with the regional staff as well, along with the archaeological report.
I'll take care of
The
it.
need
Tell me
for-
who you're talking to, but I'll probably go to your boss. Yeah, thank you. Seeing no further comments, can I have the motion, please, motion?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Gillespie, that P report number 36-2022 be received, and all comments and correspondence received through the public movement and associated consultation process be returned to staff for consideration in a future report to council on the submission of this matter.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you.
Thanks,
Next up is report number 8.2, report number PD 37-2022, proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 3081 Old Beverly Road, file number ZC-06/22. Notice has been given to those in accordance with the Planning Act. The clerk will record everyone who has commented on this application, attended and or have registered with the clerk's division to attend this meeting this evening. Those individuals will be notified of the decision or the convening of future meetings. I'd now like to introduce Andrew McNeely, Chief Administrative Officer, who will be presenting this application. Andrew?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a brief presentation tonight that will provide a summary overview of zoning bylaw amendment application ZC-0622 related to 3081 Old Beverly Road. The purpose of the statutory public meeting that's before council this evening is to provide an overview of the development proposal itself, to solicit comments from interested members of the public, government agencies, and other stakeholders that can be reflected in a future report to Township Council on the merits of the planning application, to identify issues or matters to be assessed by staff as part of the consideration of the subject. The purpose of the zoning application before council tonight, application Z6-22, proposes to amend an existing site-specific bylaw 20.1.34 that would facilitate the expansion of the buildings on the property to facilitate storage and maintenance of repair of buses, and to broaden the range of uses permitted in the bylaw from just school buses to buses. In support of the proposed zoning application, following technical reports have been prepared by the applicant. They're available for reviewing and downloading on the township's website in the planning division portion of the website. So survey, building plans and elevations, environmental impact brief, transportation study, grading and drainage plans, stormwater management letter, and a planning justification. All of these reports are presently being reviewed by township personnel, as well as where applicable external agencies. The subject lands itself are located on the south side of Old Beverly Road, just to the west of Shellard Road. And obviously this is in the red block area, located where my cursor is showing. The property is identified with the civic address of 3081 Old Beverly Road. There's an existing one-story residence located on the property, and then there's existing buildings located to the rear in the south westerly portion of the property that are associated with maintenance of the fleet. And then to the rear along the south lot line, you'll see a cluster of yellow school buses that are parked in this general location. The property itself has a lot area of approximately 9.95 acres. At present, the property itself is zoned Z1 agriculture, and as noted previously, there is a site-specific exemption specific to this property, exemption 20.1.34. It applies to the property in its entirety, all 9+ acres, and it permits the school bus garage, including storage, repair, and maintenance of the school buses. The applicant has filed the zoning application to permit two specific changes to the site-specific exemption provisions. One is to facilitate expansions to the existing buildings to create more square footage to allow for the proper storage and repair of a fleet of buses, and to also allow, as an additional use, the ability to maintain coach buses. So the intent is to remove the word school buses and just refer to it as buses. And you can see from this site sketch, this is over Old Beverly Road across the road frontage to the north. There's the existing driveway access. It's one principally serves the residence, which is located at this location. And this larger driveway, the approximate property center, provides the primary access to the bus facility. And you can see the building footprints proposed for the existing building plus addition, as well as the provision of parking for the employees who drive the various buses, as well as the surface area proposed for bus storage and parking. This is just a very quick show of an elevation of the proposed new building or the building expansion. And once you can, as you can see, we have a series of larger overhead doors that permit the buses to access the interior of the building. We are looking at Eastern building, excuse me, where there being two, is approximately 3,200 square feet in size. The existing Western building is approximately 2,300 square feet in size and would be, through the enlargement or addition, would increase to approximately 8,890 square feet. The proposed building expansion would include 4 maintenance bays as well as a closed wash bay. The proponent contemplates equivalent of 45 buses being parked on the property and 30 stalls for employee or bus driver parking. This is a series of photos from the existing property. And you can see this is the large building that the addition is going to occur to, and this outline of the red line to the south of the existing building shows the enlargement and its general footprint and orientation. So as you can see, at present, we have an active operating site but narrowly used for the purposes of parking, storage, and repair to school buses. Referring to various provincial planning policies and regulations, we start with the provincial policy statement. And what we're once again we're looking at is the diversification of the economic base of opportunities. Under the places to grow, the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe area. Once again, development is not generally permitted outside of designated settlement areas. However, we are allowed to support existing businesses and the expansions, redevelopment of those historic existing business enterprises. The regional official plan identifies that portions of the property are designated core environmental features. The balance of the property designated rural and protected countryside. In the township's official plan, consistent with the regional document, agricultural designation, and once again, environmentally sensitive features on a portion of the property. And that is why the environmental impact study was undertaken to confirm that the proposed development, redevelopment of the site would not negatively affect or impact those adjacent environmentally sensitive features. Correspondence. There's been a piece of correspondence received from an adjacent resident located at 1372 Scheller, who has no concerns with the proposed application. With respect to agency correspondence, there's been no objections from the region, Grand River Conservation Authority, Enbridge Gas, 2 school boards, or Grand Bridge Energy. Engineering and Public Works has identified that a site plan would be required to deal with grading, drainage, traffic flow, and landscaping. And it's been reiterated again by the building department. And they're looking for information related to the location of the septic as well, to ensure that obviously the expansion area, including the parking, does not interfere with the form and function of those 2 systems. As staff reflects upon correspondence or comments received through tonight's public meeting and correspondence received to date, we obviously reflect that in our future report to Township Council. We'll be looking at matters affiliated with provincial policy and provincial interests, focusing specifically on orderly and safe development and growth and development patterns, which then flows into our own official plan and zoning bylaw in terms of the intent maintained with those respective documents. Looking at obviously compatibility, and some of those elements may work their way into a future site plan as we look at adjacent uses, including the adjacent environmental systems and features, as well as adjacent residential and rural properties. The recommendation from staff to Township Council arising through tonight's process is that all comments and correspondence received from members of the public and government agencies through the consultation process be returned back to staff for a future report to council on the disposition of this matter. Mayor, that wraps up my presentation.
Thank you, Seymour McNeely. Andrew, I believe you have a presentation. Mr. Head?
I'm just gonna start with saying it's really nice to be back here, to see your smiling face, and a little bit more personal, you know, that the monitor takes so much away from this whole organization, makes people so much nicer. But anyways, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Andrew Head. I'm from Drayton Smith Head Planning Consultants. I'm up here on behalf of their coach lines. Let's say good evening to Madam Mayor and council members of staff as well. Thank you. I'd like to thank planning staff for their detailed presentation of the application on the subject plans. I'm not going to echo everything that has been presented to you by Mr. McNeely, but I'm just going to touch on some points of interest. As noted by staff and in the zoning bylaw, school bus parking and the repair garage are allowed. This is on this property. Our proposal is to allow coach buses to serve and park on the subject property as well. We're not expanding the developable area at all. We do have a draft site plan application as well as elevations as submitted with the zone change application. When you approve the zoning bylaw amendment, we will submit the site plan application. Right? We will have full intent to tear down, we have full intent to tear down and rebuild one building and refurbish the other. Our proposal includes a 6,500 square foot expansion for the purpose of storing, maintaining, and repairing buses. This will allow the longer coach buses, which are considered longer than school buses, to be serviced on site. Current parking as approved on site is sufficient to address the needs of staff, school bus parking and coach bus parking. We will not be expanding the parking area or the area of operation at all. The traffic impact study notes there will be little to no impact by Beverly Road. The GRCA has no concerns, and they're satisfied that there will be no negative impact to the surrounding environmental area. With the proposed reconstruction, the site will be better equipped to handle stormwater management and raw safely capture any oil and grit from the updated drainage system. This proposal is in keeping with the PPS Places to Grow regional official plan and the township official plan. We trust that you will recognize that this is a minor zoning amendment that will allow air coach lines to continue to serve our community with the school system and general public bus service. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this issue? Councilors, any questions? Seeing none, can I have the motion, please?
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McCurry that PD report number 37-2022 be received, and that all comments and correspondence received through the public meeting and associated consultation process be returned to staff for consideration in future report to council on the disposition of this matter.
Thank you. All those in favor? Carry. Next is 8.3, report number PB-38-2022, proposed zoning bylaw amendments for 1589 Roseville Road, file number ZC-07/2020. Notice has been given to those in accordance with the Planning Act. The clerk will record everyone who has commented on this application, attended, and or have registered with the clerk's division to attend the meeting this evening. These individuals will be notified of the decision or the convening of future meetings. I'd now like to introduce Andrew McNeely, CAO, who will be presenting this application. Andrew, please. you say what the type of day we're having today?
Sorry for that. Madam Mayor, members of council, here to speak to a zoning bylaw amendment application ZC 0722, as it pertains to 1589 Phillipsville Road. The purpose of the statutory public meeting is to provide an overview of the development proposal, solicit comments from interested members of the public, government agencies, and other stakeholders that may reflected in a future report to Township Council on the merits of the application, and to identify any issues or matters that are to be addressed by staff as part of consideration of the subject proposal itself. The purpose of this application is almost administrative in nature. The purpose of ZC 0722 proposes to amend the existing site-specific exemption 20.1.10 to remove the commercial related activities that currently apply to this residential lot, and to add new exemption provisions to recognize some of the existing accessory buildings and their locational context within the property boundaries. This property, 1.1, is part of a larger land holding, and when the severance was created, the recognition of existing buildings vis-a-vis the lot lines were not accounted. So we're going to do a bit of a cleanup while we're also dealing with the issue of permitted land use activity. The subject lands are located in the Dickey Settlement Area 2 on the south side of Roseville Road to the west of Edworthy Side Road, and it's outlined in the red box located here. The property is addressed as 1589 Roseville Road. There is an existing single detached one-story dwelling on the property, and then along the western lot line in this general location is a large accessory garage storage building, and then along the south lot line in this general location is an existing pool house. The subject property in its entirety is approximately 1.22 acres in size, and there's approximately 272 feet of frontage on the south side of Roseville Road. There's one existing access driveway. There's no change proposed to the access driveway. Property is serviced by individual well and septic systems. There's no change to the servicing scheme of the property. The property is presently zoned rural residential Z3, which is consistent with the majority of the homes that frame both the north and the south side of Roseville Road in the Dickey Settlement 2 community. Exemption 20.1.10, which applies exclusively to the subject lands that are before council this evening, permits indoor storage and service and office use in addition to the residential use. So those commercial type activities are largely within the context of the accessory building that frames the west side of the property, and of course the continuation of the residential use in the existing residence. This just sort of gives you the scheme of the property. So this is Roseville Road to the north, the existing residence. The access driveway would be approximately across the midpoint of the frontage. This is the accessory building along the west property line, and note its proximity to the side lot line. There's a pool house that exists that literally is on the property line at the south limit, and then there's a pool in this location that obviously the pool house supports. So the intent of the proposed amendment is to do a few things. Remove the commercial related land use activities so that it truly is our Z3 residential type use on the property. The existing accessory buildings would continue to be in place. However, they would now be ancillary to the permitted residential use. We are recognizing, given the size of the property and the corresponding footprint of the existing accessory buildings, increasing the permissions applicable to this zone classification to allow the accessory buildings to occupy the equivalent of 7.7% of the lot, where the generic zone standards only allow 3%. Or sorry, 4% coverage. There would be a 0 lot line where the pool house is situated along the south lot line. We will be recognizing the side yard setback of the existing accessory building. And then we would be recognizing the fact that the accessory buildings, plural, would be used exclusively as auxiliary or accessory to the residential use and classification side to the property. So these two photos show this is the existing accessory building that's situated along the west lot line. You'll see the fence at the south lot line. The building to the south of that fence is on an adjacent property that once upon a long time ago was part of this land. So the wood fence separates notionally the boundaries between the two parcels. This is the pool house. You can see the edge of the perimeter fencing that would surround the pool enclosure. This existing pool house is situated right on the 0 lot line between the existing residence and the adjacent property. Referring to provincial policies and regulations, basically we're looking at development within a settlement area, but as I indicated, this is generally speaking administrative in nature. And so we're just looking at the efficient use of land and resources. As it relates specifically to the growth plan for the greater Golden Horseshoe area, once again, development would be within settlement areas, settlement 2 area. And once again, we're looking at the scale and intent of development reflective of the nature of the hierarchy of the settlement area. This use, as proposed, is consistent with what we would expect in a rural settlement. The regional official plan designates the property rural and protected countryside. In the township's official plan, it is, as are the adjacent properties to the north and to the east within the Dickey 2 settlement area, and portions of the property are rural and protected countryside. Public correspondence received through the consultation process as of today. There's been no correspondence received from members of the public. Agency correspondence, no objections from the region, GRCA, internally with our own engineering and public works department, Enbridge Gas, school board, or Great Bridge Energy. The building department, because we're trying to position and recognize the existing buildings in relationship to lot lines. We also have to look at the change of the use of the buildings in the context of the building code, going from a commercial industrial setting to now residential ancillary. So we're looking at change of use permitting process and the drawings that would necessary to show how this would now conform to the building code, given the reclassification of the buildings. And we have, excuse me, pool house, and there's a common wall between the two properties and how that's going to be properly secured so that there's not passage through the building from one property to another, because obviously we have issues related to fire code and fire separation ratings. We did attend the property on the 17th of August, and we can confirm that there is no commercial industrial activities occurring in the large building while may have originally been intended for that, in the present period it is not, hasn't been. And certainly the zoning going forward would ensure compliance in that regard. And truly what was in the building on the 17th would have been characterized as ancillary to the residential. As part of a future report to Township Council related to this application, obviously we'd be speaking to any comments or correspondence received through the public meeting and consultation process. We'd be making sure that all matters associated with provincial interest are properly accounted for, whether the development itself conforms with the intent and direction of the official plan and the implemented zoning bylaw, and whether or not the proposed reclassification of the property to actually narrow the permissions allowed on the site would be consistent with what we'd be looking at, not only for this property, but adjacencies in terms of the balance of the Dickey Settlement 2 area and specifically adjoining properties. It is the recommendation of staff to Township Council that all comments and correspondence received from members of the public and government agency through the consultation process be returned back to staff, and that future report to council on the disposition of this matter be prepared. Mayor, that concludes our presentation.
Thank you, CEO McNeely. Lorraine Tobin, would you like to make any comments? Okay, I have Scott Patterson. Scott, you're up. You're muted, Scott.
Good evening, Mayor Fox and members of council. Nothing further to add to Mr. McNeely's
You're
presentation.
up.
Mayor Foxton.
Scott has identified that he has nothing to add to the presentation.
Thank you very much, Scott. Any of the public wish to say anything? I guess not. Any members of council? Councilor McCreary.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a question about the tax rates that are applicable to this property. I'm curious with what's happening with that, because it must have been used commercially at one point. And now we're removing that commercial classification. Is that going to have any effect on the tax rate? Because the residential tax rate would be lower.
So, Madam Mayor, there would have been a split classification to the property, and with the rezoning application, it would just be truly residential, which is consistent with the activity occurring on the property.
Okay, so this change in the zoning would actually be what triggers the change in the tax rate?
It would be what changes the tax classification by impact, which would then change the rates calculations applied to the property. It'd be true residential.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other questions, can I have the motion, please?
Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Rollman that PD report number 38/2022 be received, and that all comments and correspondence received to the public meeting and associated consultation process be returned to staff for consideration in a future report to council on the disposition of this matter.
All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And next we have the confirmatory bylaw, please.
Myself, second by Councilor Gillespie, that bylaw number 3356-22, being a bylaw to confirm proceeding of council on September 27, 2022. We read it first, second, and third time, and finally passed, signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk.
All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And now the adjournment, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor McCurry, that whereas business before this public planning meeting has been completed at 7:54 p.m. and be it resolved that this meeting adjourns and meets again on November 7th at 6 p.m. for a council meeting.
All those in favor?